Hello, everybody, and welcome to Go Green Radio. Today's episode is going to be really fun. It's an organization we've never had on Go Green Radio, the American Cleaning Institute. They have a campaign called Our Future is Clean. And this campaign is all about highlighting what the cleaning industry is doing to create a more clean, sustainable, and healthy world. And I'm so excited to have the American Cleaning Institute's Vice President of Sustainability with us, Dr. Emily Trentacope. And she's going to be going through some of the elements of this campaign, Our Future is Clean. But first, I just want to welcome you to Go Green Radio, Dr. Trentacope. It's great to have you on.
Thank you so much, Jill, for having me. I'm so excited to talk sustainability with you today.
Same, same. Well, I'd like to begin by having you introduce the American Cleaning Institute, or ACI, to our listeners who might be unfamiliar with the organization, its mission, and its membership.
Absolutely. So, as you mentioned, the American Cleaning Institute, or ACI, as we call ourselves, we are the association that represents the people and the companies that make the cleaning products that we rely on every day. So, that includes the products that you and I use in our homes to keep ourselves and our families healthy. And it also includes the products that are used in our schools, workplaces, hospitals, buildings, and public spaces to keep the public and our communities safe and healthy. I have to say that this is actually ACI's centennial year. Believe it or not, we've been around for 100 years, keeping people safe and healthy, which is so exciting. And the members of ACI include companies who make pretty much everything that you can think of that goes into a cleaning product, and probably some things that we can't even think of. That includes the companies who make products that you and I go into a store and buy on a shelf. It includes the companies who make products that are used in hospitals and schools and other institutions. Our members are also those who make all of the ingredients that go into cleaning products, those companies who make the packaging that cleaning products come in, and even more. So as you can see, we represent a really diverse range of companies across the entire cleaning products supply chain. And I can tell you a little bit about what we do at ACI. I know that we're going to talk a lot more about it over the course of the show. But one of the things that we've done a lot over our 100 years is to help people understand how cleaning works and how important it is. I think that cleaning can get overlooked sometimes as just something that we have to do every day, but it's really essential to health and well-being. I know that very personally because I have two very young children, one of whom, as I mentioned to you before the show, was homesick this week. So we are constantly cleaning surfaces and hands and faces to keep everyone healthy. So making sure that people know the importance of cleaning is one of our big jobs at ACI. But we also do a lot of work to enable safety and innovation and sustainability, which we'll be talking about today in the cleaning products industry. One thing that ACI prides ourselves on is that we are the scientific authority on cleaning. And science is really the foundation that underpins everything that we do at our organization. We know that people want to trust that their cleaning products are safe, that they work well, and that they're being made in ways that are sustainable for the future. So you mentioned Our Future is Clean, which is great. I'll just talk a little bit about our sustainability program before we dive in. When it comes to sustainability at ACI, we are working with our industry to reduce impacts across the entire life of cleaning products. So that comes from starting with how ingredients are sourced and how cleaning products are made, to their packaging, how they're used by consumers, and even how they're disposed of. And so Our Future is Clean. We say that because sustainability, especially to me, is really about protecting the future. And so for us, that means helping to ensure a future where cleaning products and our industry can continue to keep people healthy for a long time into the future.
What a great mission. And, as you mentioned, when you become a parent, sometimes those kinds of mission statements and that kind of work can really take a much more front seat in your mind when you think about the world that you'll be leaving those kiddos. And I know I've talked to a lot of
Absolutely.
people, on Go Green Radio over the last 19 years. We're in our 19th season, about what happened to their commitment to sustainability when they became parents. I want to talk to you about the three areas where ACI is working to address climate change, specifically, because there's a lot of components of sustainability, but climate change is big one. And one of the things that you guys are working on is circular packaging. And not everybody who's listening and watching may know what that means. So help us understand what circular packaging is all about and how ACI is working with its members towards that goal.
Absolutely. First, let me say, Jill, congratulations on 19 years. That is incredibly exciting. So, congratulations on that.
Thank
And
you.
yes, packaging. So, packaging is an incredibly important part of cleaning products. Obviously, it's what you and I see when we go into a store and look at a shelf, but it also serves several jobs. It protects the product, it protects the user of the product, and it shows you what you're getting and tells you a little something about it. Now, you mentioned circular packaging, and it can sound complex. I would say at a simple level, it basically means finding ways to create less waste and to get more use out of the materials that we already have. And so that could mean for cleaning product packaging that the packaging is easier to recycle and then get used again. It could mean that the packaging actually includes recycled material in the packaging itself, or uses less new plastic or virgin plastic, as we call it. Or it could mean that the packaging can actually be refilled and reused instead of being thrown out right away. And one of the ways that circular packaging helps address climate change is because it really reduces the need for new raw materials, which are energy intensive to produce. I think one thing that's important to think about with circular packaging is that it encompasses a lot more than just product packaging design. And it encompasses a lot more than just the packaging of the product that you're getting and what to do with it. It includes the entire ecosystem of partners who are involved in waste management, including consumers and what they do with the package, regulators who are helping to set sort of the rules and guidelines around what the system looks like, and recyclers who are a huge part of the system to making sure that circular packaging actually gets back into to be used again. So ACI helps to try and build bridges between these different partners and our industry so that this whole system of circularity can advance together in a way that will actually result in a positive environmental impact. And I have one example we can talk about recently. We just recently worked with consumers to understand their perspectives on certain types of cleaning products that are either concentrated. So let's say you go to a store and you buy a more concentrated all-purpose cleaner that you then dilute at home. And also their opinions on reuse and refill systems where you're reusing packaging over and over again. And we used the insights from consumers to not only help the industry understand what consumers are thinking, but also for the other partners in that packaging ecosystem to help them understand what will really be necessary and most effective to move towards some of these more circular models. And I'll just end by saying, I think an exciting part about circularity is that it's both an environmental opportunity, but we see more and more that it's a business opportunity for our industry and our members as well. The more effectively that we can recover waste and keep it back into the system and reuse materials, the less that ends up in landfills in the environment. And that's the more value that we actually keep in the system.
And it can be cheaper too. I mean, if you're reusing packaging or finding a new life for that packaging, that can be a whole lot cheaper than continuously creating packaging out of virgin materials. And I gotta say, I mean, the value that ACI brings to its members by conducting these surveys and putting together this research is so much more efficient and cost effective than every company doing that for themselves. So what a great service to your members. I want to shift to another way that you all are addressing climate change, and that is net zero emissions. How is ACI helping its members work towards that goal?
Yeah, thanks, Jill. I'm really excited to talk about this one because we have a new initiative this year that we just launched for members that I'll get to in a second. But first, let's start with net zero because I think net zero is a term that a lot of folks are hearing in sustainability and with climate change, and it can sound like a big abstract idea, but ultimately it's about finding practical ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions over time. Now, for the cleaning products industry, that could mean reducing greenhouse gas emissions across the entire life cycle of a product. That could be reducing emissions where ingredients are sourced and how they're manufactured. It could be reducing emissions in the manufacturing of the packaging. It could be reducing emissions in the transportation of products, and even in the use of products by consumers and the disposal of those products at the end of the day. Now, you mentioned earlier one of the services that ACI plays is convening some of those conversations across partners, and that's absolutely true for greenhouse gas emissions in the industry as well. Trying to reduce emissions across an entire value chain is much more complex than trying to reduce emissions in your own company because you don't have immediate control over a lot of those emission sources and where they're coming from. So this is where ACI really is focusing our efforts. We see that emissions are more and more being considered by companies in business decisions. It's not just a sustainability checklist or a reporting requirement. Companies are really starting to integrate greenhouse gas emissions into their decisions as a business. And so that means that sustainability professionals in companies are not the only ones who are involved in these conversations anymore. And that leads us to this initiative that we just launched this year for our members. We call it the Carbon Action Accelerator. And it's basically an educational and capability building program to help our industry and our companies build a common understanding of greenhouse gas emissions concepts and approaches that they can use in their companies. And through this program, our companies are going to be better prepared to be able to act on these topics as they increasingly arise in their business discussions across their supply chain partners. And the hope is that that will ultimately lead to unlocking new investments that both reduce greenhouse gas emissions while simultaneously creating value. And I think that's one of the things that we've really learned and taken in our approach to sustainability at ACI is that sustainability works best when it's woven into the core business strategy of a company and the day-to-day operations. And that's where you create value and progress that lasts into the future.
Well said. And that is a complex issue, and you really, helped us understand that very clearly. And I'm looking forward to watching that particular program progress. Tell us about the Sustainable Feedstock Initiative. What role does ACI play in helping your members work through the complexities of that initiative?
That's a great follow on because we've talked a few times already about the ingredients in cleaning products being and the sourcing of those ingredients being one of the areas where companies can look to reduce emissions. And so the idea behind sustainable feedstocks at its core is pretty simple. Feedstocks are the raw materials that are used to make cleaning product ingredients, and a sustainable feedstock is a material that can meet the industry's needs today without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their needs as well. Again, as we mentioned at the beginning, sustainability, it's all about the future. So to help our industry identify and utilize these more sustainable feedstocks, especially for cleaning products, we developed this Sustainable Feedstocks Initiative a few years ago. And that includes developing several resources for our members to help them guide through their decision making on which feedstocks they might consider switching to be more sustainable for cleaning products. As part of this initiative, we developed a life cycle assessment database. And so a life cycle assessment is basically an analysis that looks at all the different types of impacts that come from a product's entire lifespan, from how it's generated and created and manufactured, all the way through how it's used and disposed of at the end of the day. So our life cycle assessment database that we generated for our members allows them to compare different environmental impacts for common cleaning product ingredients from different feedstock sources. So it looks at things like greenhouse gas emissions, land use change, water consumption, for some of the main ingredients that are in cleaning products. And then it compares those impacts across different types of feedstocks. And this allows our companies to do at least an initial screening of which feedstock switches might help lower their environmental impact of their ingredients at the end of the day. I think one thing that's important to acknowledge when we talk about switching ingredients or even reducing emissions overall is that there's no one size fits all answer to sustainability in general, as well as sustainable feedstocks. And especially decisions about feedstocks often involve balancing environmental performance with product safety, product effectiveness, affordability, and what is becoming increasingly important in this day and age is reliable supply of those ingredients over time. So what we're trying to do with this Sustainable Feedstocks Initiative is at least help our companies make informed science-based choices while they continue to innovate and improve their products over time.
Well, and I would imagine this database will shift as resources become scarce or limited. This is basically a risk management initiative because some of the things that we used to take for granted 20 years ago in terms of water supplies in certain areas where we might be sourcing things, a lot of things are changing because of climate change in terms of raw materials and accessibility to those resources. So, having an organization like yours keep that up to date is invaluable to your members, I'm sure. We're going to take a quick commercial break, but when we come back, we have much more with Dr. Trentacope. So don't go away, folks. There's more Go Green Radio right after this. Everybody, this is a great episode of Go Green Radio. Again, an organization that we haven't had on the show before, the American Cleaning Institute. And we're so pleased to have the Vice President of Sustainability for ACI, Dr. Emily Trentacope, on the show with us today. And we're walking through some really expansive sustainability initiatives that they have going, ways that they are helping their members really work hard on some of these initiatives to combat climate change and other sustainability goals. We're still on climate change, and I'd really love for you, Dr. Trentacope, to talk about some of the case studies of success from your members that you have on your website. Some of these are really inspiring. If you wouldn't mind, share a couple of those stories with us.
Absolutely. And if users or listeners want to go see for themselves, you can go to cleaninginstitute.org. That's where we have our website and all of our information, and you can find the case studies that Jill referenced. What I love about these case studies is that they show that progress can happen in so many different ways. And there are so many innovative ways that our members and our companies and our industry are finding to reduce impact and specifically reduce greenhouse gas emissions. I think we all know it's going to take a diversity of approaches and technology and innovation to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and address climate change. And it's no different in the cleaning products industry. So to share a couple of those examples that you can find on the website, our members are tackling this challenge from so many different angles, including switching to lower emissions or bio-based ingredients and feedstocks. We just talked about that a little bit with the sustainable feedstocks. Some of them are using smarter water management solutions in their manufacturing. Some are using renewable energy in their manufacturing operations, which lowers the carbon footprint of their products. Others are reducing their packaging and increasing their packaging circularity, like we mentioned a little bit before. And some are reformulating their products entirely in ways that reduce material use in the product or even reduce the transportation needs. And then some really exciting innovations are where some of our companies are reformulating their products and innovating so that the consumer's footprint when they use the product is lower. And I think that's a really exciting angle because it allows us as consumers to be able to be sustainable in our choices when we use these products every day. I have to make a plug that our biannual sustainability report, the American Cleaning Institute does a biannual sustainability report where we talk about all this great progress going on across the industry and sustainability. That's going to be coming out later this fall. And it will be a great place to read up on some of the most up-to-date stories and case studies on what our industry is doing. So definitely keep an eye out for that later this year.
Sounds good, and I will. I really want to go back to circular packaging for just a moment because we talked about it in the context of climate change. But, as you're rolling out this campaign, Our Future is Clean, you have a circular packaging ambition. And maybe I'm just really hyped up about this because I spent the last 2 days at the National Recycling Coalition's annual conference. And so circular packaging was a huge topic. And so I'd really love for you to talk about some specific ways that some of your members are moving towards this initiative.
Yeah, and I think you're right, Jill. I think that circular packaging it's gaining a lot of momentum. I think as more and more people realize that It's that simultaneous solution of environmental impact as well as value for industries and businesses at the end of the day. So the cleaning products industry has been making strides towards circular packaging using lots of different approaches for a long time. So we just mentioned how climate change is going to take diverse solutions, and reducing waste and circular packaging is going to take diverse solutions as well. So some of our members have been doing with cleaning products are increasing the amount of recycled content in their packaging. So that means that more of the packaging, the plastic or the paper or whatever is used in the packaging is coming from recycled materials instead of new raw or virgin materials. We also see innovations in packaging materials for cleaning products that are compostable or biodegradable. We see our members redesigning their packaging entirely to be more recyclable, meaning that when it enters a recycling system, it is more likely to be able to be recycled. We see an increase in interest and piloting and exploration of reuse and refill systems that allow packaging to be used many times over before disposal. And I will say it's not just the products that you and I go and buy on a shelf. If you remember, one of the groups of companies that ACI represents are those that supply and manufacture cleaning products for institutions and facilities like hospitals, schools, even hotels. And these innovations for circular packaging and cleaning products and systems can also be found in those settings. I don't think we don't often think about what's behind the scenes when we go to some of those places and what's behind the scenes to keep them clean. But there's a pretty good chance that it involves a really cool cleaning product system, as especially the reuse and refill systems are becoming more prevalent in those sorts of environments. And those types of systems not only keep workers safe, but they also reduce packaging and waste. So those are some of the different ways that our members have been looking to increase circular packaging and reach our ambitions over time. And like I said, it's not just the ones that we buy on the shelf. Anytime you go to an institution where that area needs to be kept clean, you can think that in the background there's someone using probably a more circular cleaning product in that setting as well.
Absolutely. Now, tell us about how the how to recycle label is impacting your members, and what they're doing to increase the recycling rates of their products.
Yeah, the how to recycle label is really helpful because it's right there on the packaging oftentimes, and it gives consumers really clear directions about what to do with the package. Instead of guessing, consumers can see what parts of the package can be recycled and exactly how they should handle them. And that kind of really clear guidance can make recycling easier for consumers and less confusing. So many ACI member companies use these labels to help people understand and help consumers understand which parts of the package are recyclable and how to dispose of them properly. One of the things we talked about earlier in the show was that whole ecosystem that has to come together around circular packaging. And consumer education and behavior is a really important part of building a more circular packaging system. And so anything that our industry can do to help consumers understand what to recycle, how to reuse or dispose of things properly is something that we want to make sure we do.
Well, and just coming from, a background in the waste industry as well, we do a lot of work with whether it's the National Recycling Coalition or various state recycling organizations. What is considered recyclable is kind of a zip code by zip code proposition at the moment. And I know that's got to make it very difficult for your members. And so I know that a lot of states are working on making this more institutionalized, but it's all about infrastructure. The reason that what's recyclable maybe in the town you live versus the town that you work in is simply because of access to a variety of recycling markets. And, our country is working really hard to beef up its infrastructure to deal with recyclable materials. But until we have ubiquitous and uniform recycling solutions nationwide, it really is up to the consumers to pay attention to what is and what is not recyclable in their communities. A lot of communities have apps for that too.
That's right.
It's a challenge for your industry because of all the different regulations and regulating bodies. I'd love for you to talk to us about some of the partnerships that you all have created that will help you scale circular packaging or more sustainable packaging solutions for cleaning products.
Yeah, and I think Jill, you mentioned some of the other players that are involved in that whole ecosystem for making for reducing waste and increasing our circularity. And those are exactly some of the partners that ACI as an association helps to build relationships with between us and our industry and those other partners. So we work directly with policymakers, we work with nonprofits who work with consumers to help increase that education. We of course bring the industry perspective and the challenges that the industry faces, and we're all rowing in the same direction. And so those relationships are so important to make sure that we're putting things in place in that ecosystem that are really going to have impact at the end of the day. I think we've talked about how reducing emissions is not something that one organization can do. It's the same with reducing packaging waste. And so partnerships are so incredibly important for making progress in that area. I talked a little bit right then about what ACI does, but our individual member companies in the cleaning products industry participate in all sorts of global and regional partnerships. Some of the ones that your listeners might have heard of are the Alliance to End Plastic Waste, the Recycling Partnership, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and their global commitment. And those are just to name a few of the many partnerships that our industry makes to be able to advance in this area. Our members also participate in really innovative pilots, not only in the US, but around the world to test out new and innovative approaches like some of these reuse and refill systems for packaging that we've talked about. And for ACI members, these sorts of collaborations and partnerships and these pilots, they provide access to research, they provide shared learning and some practical solutions that can help move that needle faster on circular packaging. And just to end there, as we discussed earlier, really scaling circular packaging beyond just one industry or one company is going to require all of those partners to work together: business, governments, policymakers, consumers, nonprofits. And I think that's where ACI helps see itself as one of those conveners across those relationships.
What are some of the things that our listeners can do to help reduce the impact of packaging for the cleaning products that they purchase for their own use?
I'm so glad that you asked that question, Jill, because I think that while the industry is doing a lot to help increase the circularity of the products, there's a lot that we as consumers can do to leverage those innovations, tap into it, and make sustainable choices ourselves. So just a few things, I think that a few simple things that I think we can let listeners know about. One is to recycle packaging where your local program accepts it. You mentioned earlier, Jill, that it can sometimes be a very local decision on what's recyclable. So pay attention to labels that explain how to recycle or dispose of packaging correctly. Even if packaging is labeled as compostable or biodegradable, there's often an appropriate way by which to dispose of it. And I think this is a really important thing for listeners and consumers to understand. Even as our industry and others move towards more compostable and biodegradable packaging, that doesn't mean that you can go throw it in your backyard or throw it in a river. And so I really encourage listeners to look at the label and understand the appropriate way to dispose of packaging. I would also say that you can look for reuse and refill systems or concentrated products in the store that use less packaging. If you think about it, even just reusing the hand soap container that you have at your sink and then going to the store and buying the large jug of soap that you refill it with, that's a decision right there where you're reducing packaging waste. And those small choices really add up over time. I'll say also, those are some choices you can make, but really it's even simpler habits that can make a big difference. If you buy just what you need, and especially if you use cleaning products as directed, that can help reduce waste because the product will be able to work in the way that it's intended to, and you won't have to be re-cleaning things over and over again. And when we think about millions of households making some of these small changes, the impact really starts to scale.
It sure does. Well said. We're going to take a quick commercial break, but when we come back, we have so much more with Dr. Trentacope. So don't go away, folks. There's more Go Green Radio right after this. Buddy, welcome back to Go Green Radio. So glad that you could join us. We're talking to the Vice President of Sustainability for the American Cleaning Institute, and they have undertaken several initiatives to help their members, which are the producers and source companies for cleaning products that we use every day in our homes and in commercial facilities as well. And one of the things that I was just really struck by on your website, Dr. Trentacope, is that it makes a really simple, but if you think about it, really profound statement about water. It says, clean water is a critical element of cleaning. And for some people, they might say, well, duh, but clean water is not something that we can take for granted sometimes. Talk to us about why it's increasingly important to conserve water and give our listeners some tips for saving water when they clean.
That's You're absolutely right, Jill, in that water is fundamental to health and everyday life, but it's also fundamental to cleaning, not only in the ability to make cleaning products, but in the actual act of using them and cleaning as well. So conserving water really matters, especially as so many communities are starting to face growing pressure from climate change, population growth, infrastructure challenges. As these pressures rise, being thoughtful about water use is becoming more and more important, not only for companies, but for individual consumers at home. So saving water while cleaning doesn't have to be complicated, which is the good news. One thing that everyone can do is run full loads in your dishwasher or your washing machine, so you're not running lower loads and having to run more loads, and turn off the tap when you don't need it running. I think a lot of us had a public service campaign when we were younger about turning the tap off when you're brushing your teeth. Same thing for when you're cleaning. Only turn that tap on when you're actually using it and needing it. One thing I think that's really exciting about our industry and what our companies are doing is that many modern cleaning products are designed to work effectively with less water. And that really helps people conserve resources at home without sacrificing the performance of the cleaning products. So for example, nowadays you can often scrape your plates into the trash after eating dinner before loading the dishwasher instead of rinsing all of them in the sink. That simple act saves so much water. And it saves energy because you're not using hot water and the energy to heat the water. And so that's one simple thing you can do at home is look for products that are effective in washing in the dishwasher without having to rinse your plates ahead of time. And again, it's those small habits that are really easy for people to adopt that build into their routine and scale over time.
Well, and I can remember when nobody believed that detergents worked in the washing machine unless the machine was on hot or bare minimum warm. And now, that is not the case. And that is because of innovations with the cleaning industry. There are so many ways in which water and energy savings are related. And I'd really love to have you talk to us about the Cold Water Saves initiative.
Yes, this is the Cold Water Saves is such a fantastic initiative because it gives people like me and you and everyday consumers the power at home to reduce their impact and save money in one very simple change. I grew up where we had hot water loads, cold water loads, colors were separated from whites, and we did all those different loads of laundry. And I would guess that a lot of people are potentially still doing that themselves. I would also guess that a lot of people don't know that the single biggest contributor of greenhouse gas emissions when you're doing laundry is not the product that you're using. It's the energy used to heat the water in your washing machine, as you alluded to, Jill. I personally didn't know that until I learned about Cold Water Saves, and I have completely switched my laundry routine since joining ACI. Since most of the energy used by a washing machine goes towards heating that water, if you wash your clothes in cold water, that lowers the energy usage. It saves you money on your utility bills, which is the best part, and it reduces emissions over time. As you mentioned, I think some people think that cold water doesn't clean as well, but that's really an outdated assumption. Most detergents and washing machines are designed to perform very well in cold water. And in fact, you can often find that stated right on the label of the product. So now in my house, we wash all of our water, all of our laundry in cold water. And it's a really easy shift that a lot of households can make. And like we've talked about several times, that collective impact of millions of households making that switch can be very significant. And listeners can go to coldwatersaves.org if they want to learn more about what they can do and the impact that it can have. But yes, that's such a fantastic initiative.
Yes, if our listeners and viewers take nothing else from this episode, take that one. You do not need hot water in your washing machine, so please take that on board. What are some of the other ways that the cleaning industry as a whole is working on saving energy? Because as you mentioned, that is a big contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. It's also expensive. My nonprofit organization works with school districts throughout the country, the Go Green Initiative, and right under payroll, with paying everybody who works at the school district, almost uniformly, the second biggest budget line item is energy. And so what are some ways that you all are working on that initiative?
We just mentioned the cold water saves and the fact that there has been a lot of innovation in the chemistry around cleaning products to enable some of those switches that reduce energy consumption and impact. And so that's one of the ways that we're reducing footprint. The fact that products are now so effective in cold water can really help on the user side of things. But the industry is also approaching energy savings from several different angles. Some of them we've mentioned already. But we also have companies who are moving towards more efficient manufacturing processes at their plants. We've talked about sustainable feedstocks. Some of that includes switching to less energy intensive feedstocks, which helps our companies save on energy. And also the greater use of renewable energy at their facilities or smarter and renewable fuels in transportation. And then in addition to some of those switches that companies can make for themselves, there are other product innovations that we've mentioned already, like concentrated formulas. And while those concentrated formulas help we've talked about them from a circular packaging perspective, they also really help reduce shipping weight of products. And that helps reduce energy consumption as well. So there's a lot of different angles. I think that's probably one of the themes of the day is that there are so many diverse ways to tackle these different sustainability issues. And we see our member companies trying out all of the different potential approaches to do so.
I remember when concentrated detergents and dishwashing detergents first started hitting the market, and I was thrilled. My husband is a supply chain professional, and we talk about this kind of stuff all the time. But thinking about not having to move very heavy. I mean, water is heavy in a big jug of laundry detergent or dishwashing detergent, not having to ship that decreases the amount of energy encased in the supply chain by I don't even know how many fold. I mean, it's just a huge, huge savings. And so I remember when that first became a thing, and I was thrilled to death. I'd love for you to talk to us, speaking of supply chain management, about some of the supply chain management issues that intersect with ACI's sustainability goals.
Sustainability is increasingly intersecting supply chain management. We talked a little bit earlier about how sustainability is really becoming embedded, especially when we were talking about greenhouse gas emissions, into the business of companies and into business decisions. And supply chain management is one of those big places where it intersects. So maybe just to give listeners a little bit of background on what supply chains are, when you go and buy a cleaning product from the store, you buy a product off of the shelf. But there's an entire network behind getting that product onto the shelf, from the raw material sourcing and ingredient manufacturing that we've talked about, to the packaging manufacturers that are supplying the packaging, the transportation of that product, and ultimately its distribution at whatever store you bought it at. And sustainability really touches all of those different parts of the cleaning product supply chain. Companies are having to balance resource and ingredient availability in their supply chains. They're looking at responsible sourcing to make sure that the way in which ingredients are generated and sourced is responsible in terms of the communities and the environment that they impact. They are looking at transportation challenges, whether it be across oceans or air or over land. We've mentioned some of the challenges with greenhouse gas emissions and packaging, and also the availability of some of those sustainability features like recycled content and the availability of recycled content for packaging. We've talked about conserving water and water use in operations being a very important consideration in supply chain. And they're even grappling with data, looking at data across their supply chains and how do they share it and how do they use it and what can they learn from it, especially in this age of AI being able to create more and more data. But no single organization controls the entire value chain. We've mentioned this before. This could be another theme of the day, is that no single organization can do this on their own. And so collaboration across your supply chain and your value chain becomes essential when you're trying to do any sort of supply chain management, including issues related to sustainability. And this is where we really see ACI being able to sit and play a role. We help our companies in our industry share best practices, collaborate pre-competitively on issues like responsible sourcing and emissions reduction, and supply chain resilience to make sure that those supply chains can continue to be reliable in the future and make sure that those products can get on the shelves at the end of the day. And what we found is that ultimately more resilient supply chains are good for, of course, not only business, but they're also good for sustainability.
Well, and there's another element to supply chain management that, is something that consumers started to get concerned about several years ago, and it's the people involved in the supply chain and their work conditions and their wages and things like that. And a lot of companies have kind of, tripped over and had some negative impacts by not thinking about those aspects, the people, humanity aspects of their supply chain. And when those stories became public, it was not a good time for their brand. And so I know that sometimes it's very difficult and very expensive for individual companies to do the kind of research and collect the kind of data that they need, even on that aspect of supply chain management. And I'm sure that's where ACI can be very helpful and very valuable as well. We are going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we have so much more with Dr. Emily Trentacope. So don't go away, folks. There's more Go Green Radio right after this. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Go Green Radio. We are so excited that you're with us today. Dr. Emily Trentacope is with us. She's the Vice President of Sustainability for the American Cleaning Institute, or ACI. And we have been talking about a whole host of their sustainability initiatives. Just get out on their website. And Emily, I'm going to have you give the website because I think that it's something that there's so much material out there. Our viewers and our listeners are really going to enjoy looking through what you guys have going on. Before you give us the website, I'm going to ask you a question because this is one of the most difficult things. I think that a lot of companies, when it comes to their sustainability initiatives, are daunted by the disclosures, the paperwork, the documentation. How does ACI help its members with some of these disclosures and transparency around sustainability issues?
Transparency is so important because people, consumers, they want information that they can understand, that they can trust, and that includes sustainability and environmental impacts, but also effectiveness of products and social impacts and whatever it is that they want to learn more about. So the information that companies communicate, including cleaning products companies, needs to be credible, science-based, which is, of course, incredibly important to ACI as a science-based organization. And it has to be understandable at the end of the day by consumers. So the role that ACI plays is we really help our members in our industry try and communicate more clearly about sustainability. And we try to help navigate what all of these different stakeholders expect: consumers, regulators, other stakeholders, what are their expectations, and what do they understand. We also work with external stakeholders to create opportunities for education and collaboration and aligning expectations so that we can bring what the industry is seeing to those conversations as well. We mentioned earlier that ACI, we pride ourselves on being the scientific authority on cleaning. And so we really encourage communication that is science-based and credible, and especially supported by data, because we know that consumers deserve that clear, accurate information, not only about cleaning products, but also about our sustainability efforts.
And give us that website where our folks can, like
Yes.
the homepage.
Yes, thank you. You can go to cleaninginstitute.org. That is the homepage for the American Cleaning Institute, where you can learn all about not only what we are doing with our industry, but what our industry and cleaning product companies are doing, as well as a lot of information, some of which we've touched on already, about what you as a user and a consumer can do to make sustainable choices when it comes to cleaning at home.
Very cool. Very cool. Quick story. I got to go to the United Nations last September, and it was such a thrill to be inside the building. I was there for a UN Global Summit on indoor air quality. Of course, that does segue into cleaning as well, but we'll save that for another day. Everybody I know got UN gifts for Christmas because there was a shop in there, and I was like, "Are you kidding me? There's a shopping opportunity too." So it was a great thrill to be there. And of course, my organization and so many others really look to the UN's Sustainable Development Goals as a North Star of what is not just considered excellent, but what is considered just in terms of creating a world that is wonderful and healthy and livable for all. How does ACI's sustainability focus align with the UN Sustainability Development Goals? What are some of the SDGs that you all really embrace?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jill. And our work at ACI and with our industry connects with a number of the different UN Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. The ones that we especially align and connect with are around responsible consumption and production, climate action, which we've talked about some of the work we're doing on greenhouse gas reduction across the industry, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, and partnerships. And I think what's really important to consider is that sustainability is so interconnected. So when we make progress in one of those areas, it often supports progress in others. And that's why ACI tries to sit at that intersection of collaboration across not only our industry, but other sectors who are trying to make progress towards those different goals as well, so that we can collectively have that action towards long-term results.
I love it. And I think that the more organizations that at least keep an eye on those sustainable development goals, the more it prompts us to think about new ways of upping our sustainability game. It's really not a race to the finish. It is an ongoing journey. And ACI's initiatives really reflect that mindset. I want you to talk to our listeners and our viewers who are consumers of cleaning products. It could be because they're buying them for their homes, could be that they're the purchasing officer for their commercial facility. When they are looking for sustainable cleaning products, what are some of the things that they should be looking for?
Great question. I think that we've hit on a few of these earlier, and so let's bring them all into one answer from across the session. I would say that when shopping, listeners can look for a few easy to spot signs for making sustainable choices. One is recyclable packaging. One is looking for refill options. So again, get that hand soap container and go back and get the big jug of refill hand soap instead of buying a new container over and over again. I would say you can look for concentrated products. That's, like we talked about, a way that you can save not only on packaging, but on emissions and water use. And so look for those concentrated products and give them a try. One of the ones that we use at home is an all-purpose cleaner that we spray on surfaces, and it comes in one of those concentrated bottles. And you go home and you pour a little bit, tablespoon or whatever the package says, into a bigger bottle that you dilute with water to be able to spray. So look for concentrated products and always make sure that you follow the directions on the package. And we also mentioned clear recycling directions like the how to recycle label. Those are ways that consumers can look for things or certain types of products that help them reduce their impact. We also mentioned products that work well in cold water or are designed to use less water overall. So keep an eye out for that with your laundry detergent and for being able to use dishwasher detergents where you don't have to rinse your plates ahead of time. And I'll say beyond those kind of immediate choices that you can make with products, I think it's really important to remember that sustainability and performance and effectiveness of cleaning products really go hand in hand. Products that work effectively and help clean efficiently are going to reduce unnecessary waste and resource use. If you have to clean something over and over again, if you have to wash something over and over again, that's now increasing your footprint and your impact and reducing the sustainability. So oftentimes making sure that you're getting a product that's going to be effective for what you're trying to clean is a sustainable choice right there in and of itself.
I'm going to ask you a follow-up question to that because, you know, a lot of your members have invested a lot of money into certifications so that if people see a little certification on the product, that should mean something. People are used to doing that with food. If it's, certified organic or gluten-free or whatever the label may be. Are there labels like that ACI feels comfortable saying these mean sustainability?
Yeah, that's a great question because I think that the certification and label space can get very, very complex and very overwhelming for a consumer very quickly. I will say that one of the labels that ACI is very supportive of, that we have made sure to try and continue support over time, is the EPA's Safer Choice label. That's one that you can find on a lot of cleaning products. A lot of our members participate in that, and that's one that ACI absolutely supports. There's a whole lot of other ones out there that you can look at too. I would say look at the label, read it, do your research, but the US EPA Safer Choice label and program is one that ACI supports.
I was really hoping you would say that because that's one that the Go Green Initiative also supports. It's something that really is a rigorous certification process, and it's trustworthy. And it's something that even as we're working with school districts that are looking to create green cleaning programs, I've worked with so many school districts that have been fooled by labels that weren't as rigorous and weren't as trustworthy as EPA Safer Choice. So we'll put that little plug in for EPA Safer Choice at the end of the show. But we just have a minute or so left, Dr. Trentacope, and I want to give you a chance to talk to our viewers and our listeners with some parting thoughts. Wrap this message up in a bow for us.
Absolutely. Well, first, let me say it's been so fantastic to be on the show. I've loved talking about all of these different initiatives, but also just how important these topics are, not only for the cleaning products industry, but for us as consumers and other industries as well. I'll try and tie maybe a few themes together that we talked about. Going back to the very beginning of the show, I'd love to leave listeners with the thought that cleaning is essential to healthy people and a healthy world. Sometimes we do it because we got to do it, but it is such an essential part of keeping ourselves, our families, and our communities healthy. And the cleaning products industry is constantly striving to not only innovate, have more effective products, but to have more sustainable and resilient products that ensure that we as an industry will be here for a long time when people need us the most to continue to maintain cleanliness and health and well-being. We talked about some ways that users and consumers and listeners can make an immediate impact at home in cleaning and with your cleaning products. And just one thing I would say before we touch on some of those is remember that you don't have to do everything perfectly to make a
Right.
difference. It's really small, practical choices that can help. We talked about washing in cold water, using the right amount of product in the right way, recycling packaging when you can. Those small choices add up over time. You can also look for some of
Absolutely.
the product innovations we talked about, like reuse and refill options and things like that. And I'll just leave you with, if you want to learn more, please go to our website, cleaninginstitute.org, to keep an eye out for our sustainability report later this year. And as we mentioned at the beginning, our future is clean.
Thank you so much, Dr. Trentacope, and thank you to the American Cleaning Institute for all the hard work you're doing on behalf of your industry and also on behalf of all of us who are the recipients of the effective products that are being put out. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to our listeners for joining us as well. We'll be here same time, same place next week with more Go Green Radio. Until then, have a wonderful week and do something in your life to go green.